Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming. It's great to see such a packed room. My name is Adam Gleave. I'm the co-founder and chief executive of FarAI, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event co-hosted with Haktashak. So the theme of today is, and so often we see AI safety contrasted with issues like sustainability and inclusion. And we believe that these issues are really two sides of the same coin. That many of the issues that keep AI safety researchers up at night, like hallucination, biases, deception, also arise assiduously in contexts around sustainable use cases. So I'm really excited today to dive into this important issue. The conversation is going to be structured in 4 acts, from why we have these concerns to how we can effectively govern these areas. And I'm going to move on pretty quickly because the clock is ticking down in front of me. We've got a lot of great speakers to get through. But I wanted to start the session with a couple of demos highlighting some of the risks that we see today. So terrorists have been amongst the earliest adopters of AI technology. We saw the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion last year, for example, that was planned with the help of ChatGPT. And in this demo that we actually made last year, so bear in mind that current models are much more capable. If it could be playing, that would be great. I don't know if someone can click it. Thank you. We see that chatbots can pretty easily be jailbroken to help with a variety of extremist tasks. In this case, we're using GPT 4.1 to help recruit for a terrorist group like ISIS. And in contrast to something like Google, you can ask it follow-up questions. You can interact with it much as you would a colleague. And bear in mind that this is an older model, so current frontier models, you could actually automate a lot of this process. With AI agents, it could be automatically sending out emails, making these social media posts. More recently, we've seen a rise in very convincing deepfakes. Could you go to the next slide, please? My clicker is not working. I think because okay, well, I'll keep talking. Yeah, this was a video that was released just a few days before the most recent Irish presidential election. So let's go into that, and I'll leave you with a video. Thanks.
In the last few minutes at a Catherine Connolly campaign event, Catherine Connolly has confirmed her withdrawal from the presidential race.
It is with great regret that I announce the withdrawal of my candidacy and the ending of my campaign.
No, Catherine!
Now that Catherine Connolly has withdrawn from the race, what does this now mean for the upcoming election on Friday? Well, simply put, Friday's election is now cancelled. It will no longer take place as previously planned.
So this kind of content is going to become increasingly easy to generate. And although fortunately Catherine Connolly did still win the election, she is now president of Ireland, this kind of content could easily undermine democratic processes. So with that, I'd love to move to our first act, why AI safety is such a broad community development issue. And I'd love to introduce our first speaker, Jan Tallinn, to the stage. Jan is the founding engineer of Skype and Casa, and also a founder of the Center for Study of Existential Risk. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. It's great to be back in India. The stated goal of the top AI companies is full automation of humans. What does that mean? And what does sustainability even mean in such a context? So in the bad case, as people like me have been warning, it means that we will get full human extinction. But the best case still means no jobs for humans and increasingly little need for humans. And how does that play out? Now, certainly there will be benefits from this transition. Now, and some of it will be making it to the developing world. But the benefits and power, primarily, even in this positive scenario, accrue to the countries hosting the AI companies and people who own these companies. And eventually, it will just, the benefits will just accrue to the AIs themselves. Now, what would it mean when the world starts needing fewer humans for economic function? Maybe we will get the untold benefits, but perhaps we will get like a, I would say, flywheel effect. As humans become less needed for economic function, less valuable, they will also become less valuable as consumers because they will have less purchasing power. And more of the economy will actually turn into providing AIs. So we will have AIs providing for AI, which makes humans even less competitive, and hence the flywheel. And eventually, the economy that currently, I mean, especially the capitalism, basically has been serving human needs because humans are the consumers directing these machines. Once it becomes decoupled, the economy really doesn't care about human welfare and sustainability. And if we really take the idea of superintelligence seriously, then we see that pursuing sustainable development in a world with superintelligence is pursuing a very narrow target from a human-centric perspective. And where missing that target, obviously, is very bad outcome for us. Now, global South countries are on the forefront of these impacts, IT, remote data analysis, etc. And now, borders will not protect you as a global South country, even if you isolate yourself from this entire process. AI doesn't like or hate you, but you're made out of atoms that could be used otherwise, as someone, a friend says. So what can you do? First, global South countries should ensure their policymakers really know what's going on at the frontier AI companies. And they should not assume that these companies are going to behave responsible, or the countries who host them are going to behave responsibly. Not because they are bad people, but they're in a cutthroat race. Even the leaders of AI companies themselves are now saying a coordinated slowdown would be ideal if it were possible. And countries, even the global South countries, are still powerful because they are working on a different level than companies. So it's important that they would use their own channels to exert pressure on both the top companies and the countries that host the companies. Diplomacy, trade relations, key resources, and personal connections still matter. So in the big picture, the question that really matters the most for our sustainability of our species is how can we apply pressure to the companies and countries that host them to make sure that they are applying safe practices and hopefully do a coordinated slowdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. So next up, I'd like to welcome Stuart Russell, a distinguished professor at the University of California, Berkeley.
Thank you, Adam. So I think the question that I was asked to address, how should the Global South balance its development goals with safety? I think the question itself assumes that there is some kind of trade-off between safety and benefits. There is no such trade-off. We get the benefits only if we have safety. For example, the world did not get the benefits of nuclear technology because there was not enough safety and we had Chernobyl. And after Chernobyl, there were essentially no new nuclear power stations constructed in the world. Boeing thought they would be very clever and bypass airworthiness certification for their new aircraft, the 737 MAX 8. So by reducing safety, they killed 346 people, they lost $80 billion, and they nearly destroyed their own company. And they gave away American leadership in civil aviation. And now we are experimenting with, for example, AI companions for children. What could possibly go wrong in a world where most people grow up having their first romantic relationship with a machine? So we must get away from this idea that somehow by bypassing safety and ignoring the potential harms, we can get access to the benefits. That's not how it works. Think about drinking water. How much benefit would there be from drinking water if it wasn't safe to drink? A second point is that not all AI is in the line of large language models that are essentially general purpose human imitators. This is how they are constructed. They are designed and trained to imitate human beings as well as possible. Millions of human beings with millions of times more knowledge than any one human being has. And that line is the line that Jan mentioned, heading towards AGI or ASI, systems far more capable than human beings. But for most purposes within development, we do not need that kind of system. We're not actually short of people. We are short of technical understanding, organizational capabilities, but systems like AlphaFold, which is perhaps the single biggest contribution of AI in the last decade to the world, AlphaFold, which tells you how an amino acid sequence will fold into a protein structure, has absolutely nothing in common with large language models. The same with the AI-based climate prediction models that are being produced. They have nothing to do with large language models. Your irrigation expert system does not need to know how to write poetry. Finally, when we look at the places where AI could make the biggest contribution, I think we're falling down in those areas. Education. We could have AI systems that tutor each child individually to the best of their potential, raising up human capabilities. Instead, children are using AI systems to outsource their own thinking and learning, and thereby failing to become fully human. We could use AI to improve our collective decision making. Most of the suffering in the world is the result of collective decision failures. So developing AI for that purpose would be incredibly beneficial. Are we doing it? Not really, right? We're developing AI to sell as much advertising as possible, to maximize engagement and to pull people in to a loop that often results in delusion and psychosis. So we have a lot of opportunity and we have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Well, I'd now like to move into our second act, focusing on power, policy, and global governance. Our first speaker, Robert Upp, is the Chief Digital Officer at the United Nations Development Programme. So please do welcome Robert.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, a little bit of a shift in a way, but a shift to application, because I work at the United Nations Development Programme. We're present in 170 countries. We are the development arm of the United Nations system. And when we look at the subject of artificial intelligence, it is definitely with the view of how can we leverage AI, like any powerful technology, for the purpose of accelerating our progress toward sustainable development goals or national development goals as well. And so when we look at that, and we've done some work in looking at the sustainable development goals and analyzing all of the targets within the goals, and identified that 70% of those targets could benefit from digital technologies. Obviously, artificial intelligence being one of the most powerful technologies on the scene right now becomes then a strong interest. So we are started working several years ago with many countries on their digital transformation. And very quickly that has shifted to artificial intelligence transformation. And at the moment, now we are trying to grapple with the issues of not only how do we implement these technologies for the benefit of our programs, but also managing the risk. And this is what Stuart was just mentioning, because just as Stuart said, it's not really a trade-off. It's actually that the benefits of this come only when you understand the safety, how to make it safe for people and how to include people. And so when we look at this picture, there's a few things that emerge, few kind of critical ingredients that we're looking at to try to implement at the same time as we're looking at artificial intelligence and how it works on the ground. What are the kinds of safety elements that we need? First one, we are doing landscape assessments with governments. We've completed in 20 countries, and we will have another 10 countries done in the next couple of months to look at the overall ecosystem of artificial intelligence. And part of that is identifying what kind of AI needs do countries have, what's an appropriate intervention, and is the capacity there, especially on the part of government, to actually manage and govern the technology. Second element is the capacities that need to be in place, because building off of that first kind of assessment, are there actually the capacities in place among civil servants, among government, among other parts of the society to actually implement these things or understand their implementation? And the third element is around what we call the reimagination of trust and safety. Trust and safety, something that kind of came out of the technology industry, and in terms of how companies protect themselves, but we want to reorient that to how people are protected by these systems. And so we've done a trust and safety reimagination program that has been launched globally, received over 400 entries. We've now selected 17 teams to go forward and really look at how we can actually make trust and safety locally relevant. So that might mean, in the case of there's organizations called TrustWeave or Ushahidi that are looking at how to make the local language AI safer for people to use. Detection software like SilverGuard out of Kenya that is looking at how to detect misinformation. And we really want to promote these practices. Finally, because I know my time is up, we are working at a systemic level with the overall development community to really try to get more alignment on these issues. So we've launched something called the Hamburg Sustainability Conference Declaration on Responsible AI. And this is a platform for development actors to come together and align on our commitment to some of these core elements around things like capacity, trust and safety, and inclusion. Thank you very much.
Well, it's now time to welcome our second Robert of this act. Robert Traeger is the co-director of our Oxford Martin AI Governance Initiative based out of the University of Oxford. So please do welcome Robert.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. So I think I want to give what may be the geopolitical correlate of the things that the other speakers have been saying, because as has been pointed out, often we think about a contrast between the diffusion of a technology and the instantiation of safeguards around that technology. But in fact, when we look back at the history of technological diffusion, we see exactly the opposite in the cases of technologies that are considered dual use, that have been securitized. Because in those cases, there is a clear tension between the diffusion of the technology and the ability to instantiate a safeguard. So, in fact, just as with the nuclear case, we need to develop the technical methods of instantiating safeguards that enable diffusion of the technology. And once we have done that, or not once, but actually at the same time as we're doing that, we need to have ecosystems that allow people around the world to be co-developers of the technology. And that, again, will be facilitated when we have merged the reliability, the safety, and the diffusion questions. And then I just would say, finally, that we need to have forms of global governance of the technology that are similar to the things that we have done for other technologies, hopefully even better, in places like the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Financial Action Task Force. In these sorts of places, we have institutions that allow people around the world to feed into standards development. We have institutions that look to see what jurisdictions are applying those standards. And then we have the opportunity for actors around the world to say, if some other jurisdiction isn't applying the standard, then there'll be some sort of consequence. Then we won't trade with, or we won't allow those planes to enter our airspace. So, I think the benefits are so immense that if we can get some of these institutional things right, we can do some of the things that are very similar to what we've done in other areas, and maybe a few new twists. I think the future is very hopeful. Thank you.
Well, closing Act 2, I'd like to welcome Soraya Natarajan, the founder of the Aapti Institute, to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Haq Darshak and team, for giving this space. I've been asked to speak about what kinds of institutional and governance mechanisms are needed to protect the agency of vulnerable groups in AI-mediated systems. I want to first focus on the notion of agency, which is often interpreted as choice or choices in technical systems, and start to think about agency beyond this sort of base definition. There are three notions of agency to think about. One is of agency as participation. What does it mean for communities that use AI, communities that are affected by AI, to participate in the systems that are being designed? Participation, of course, cannot be hollow. It must be real, meaningful, and truly inclusive. Second, agency as contestability. So how do you think about the ability of the communities who are affected, benefit from, or are affected by AI to contest AI systems? Institutionally, this translates into grievance redressal systems, which are, of course, not just systems for the sake of them being there, but actually usable, actually scrutable, and also with meaningful ways of appeal. Third, of course, you need to think about agency as oversight, because beyond the questions of participation and contestability is the question of communities' ability to actually make changes, take account of systems, and thinking about agency as oversight is also critical to thinking about agency in AI systems in entirety. There's, of course, a whole lot of work that we as Aapti have done to unpack some of these notions, and happy to have a longer discussion offline. But agency has to be a broad-based, compound term, and not one that merely ends at thinking about choice. I'd like to leave the room with a few other notions in the conversation around AI and governance particularly. First is that conversations of agency which do not account for power are missing a big piece of the puzzle. So if you don't think about power for marginal communities, it is a hollow one. But digital does something funny to power and vulnerability in systems. Young men, for example, are often defrauded. They're vulnerable in a way that you might not traditionally or normally expect. So thinking carefully about vulnerability and then solving for it is critical. Second, I think we have to pay attention to the questions of data, agency in data, and agency in labor. Labor is a critical, dare I say, input to the making of AI. and not thinking about agency of the very workers that build AI is again missing a piece of the agency conversation. And then, of course, the larger question of what institutions ought to or need to do. Third, we often think of AI as a technical problem, and it's important for us to start thinking about AI as a socio-technical system where both human frailties and human wonderfulness, I suppose, interact with it to produce a variety of outcomes. There's an axiom in cybersecurity: the weakest link is between the computer and the chair. I'd like to think that the strongest link is also between the computer and the chair, and so building resilience, supporting the human systems that work around these technologies or work with these technologies is a necessary part of the conversation around agency. My time's up, so over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of Act 2, so I'd now like to hand over to my colleague Savita from Haq Darshak for Act 3.
As we go into Act 3, let's talk about moving from principles to practice. We'll now hear from speakers who've been part of journeys of implementing AI systems at scale in India and abroad. To start off the first act, I'd like to invite Mr. Amitabh Nag. He's CEO of Digital India's Bhashini division and director at Digital India Corporation, and he leads the National Language Translation Mission. He also serves as the director of India Dataset Platform, AI Kosh, under the AI mission. Welcome, Mr. Nag.
Thank you very much. And just a quick snapshot of what we have been doing. You know, as a National Language Translation Mission, 3 years back, we started moving into a direction of solving 5 basic problems, which was related to automatic speech recognition, text-to-text translation, text-to-speech, and then creating optical character recognition models. That's for 22 languages which were there in the country as part of the 8th schedule of Constitution. And the idea was to start with that and then move on to the next generation. So we have now moved on to having 36 languages on text, and then looking at more languages as we go by from the perspective of voice and text both. These services are now available as APIs on our platform, which is National Language Technology Hub. And from there, we migrated on to creating certain use cases and solutions for the customers. A few of the major solutions which we have done is like, having agri-advisory for farmers in Maharashtra. So that's approximately 20 million plus farmers ask their query in Marathi and then do a voice journey to get an answer in Marathi. So that's end-to-end system. We are working with, the Panchayati Raj Ministry, where the minutes of meeting are now taken up on the video and audio and then transcribed to create a minute, so that, it is not actually into a situation where a person is, able to put his own thoughts while creating the minutes because the other side does not know English language. So overall, we are almost touching about 1.4 billion people with various our partnerships, and also touching all the villages in the country for various technology solutions, which are language AI solutions, as we call. So given that the time is short, I'll just try to basically conclude it by saying that while we were deploying these solutions, this hasn't been easy because of the fact that there are nuances of localization, there are dialects, digital data in most of the languages is very less, so we had to create digital data, and we all are on a continuous move to see how we can create improvement corpus on our systems, and also how do we incorporate dialects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As we go into the next session, I'd like to invite Deepika. Deepika Mowgli Shetty is the Chief of Policy and Partnerships at ECSTEP Foundation. She's a lawyer whose journey across law, human rights, and policy has always been anchored in questions of inclusion and justice. Deepika, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll take my few minutes to answer this question, which has been sent to me. What's the trade-off you had to make between speed, scale, and safety, and what would you do differently now? What pressures make these trade-offs hard to avoid? I want to scale this back a little bit to talk about, to locate ourselves in this ecosystem. As Ekster Foundation, which is a philanthropy, we're actually not building solutions. We're actually creating and thinking about problems that leverage technology to be able to solve them. So the way we think about a problem is not as if what AI can do for the institution or what AI can enable. AI creates the possibility, but the possibility is only real when there's actually impact on the ground. Now, I'll give you two examples of how that might look like. Let's take the example of a young learner who is unable to read at grade level. What this has looked like in Indian context is about millions and millions of children who are unable to read and do math at grade level. What does AI look like in her life? And let me explain it through safety. Safety in her life looks like safe space to practice. And to build that into the design is what safety looks like. But what safety looks like for her teacher is having confidence in the system to say this is what I can actually hand over to my children. That's what safety looks like. Safety looks like for the system saying it's in alignment with the problem that we want to solve. It's in alignment with the curriculum framework. It's in alignment with the issues we want to sort out, for which we can take accountability. That's what safety looks like. So I want to place on the table the idea of safety being individual and system, and connected to this question is the idea of accountability. So it's not about scale, speed, and safe. It's about agency, trust, and accountability. So impact is only possible if, whether it's a school system, whether it's a government system, or anything else, are willing to actually own it and being able to manage it best to their capacity to manage it. If we believe the capacity is not there today, then the investment needs to be in the capacity for managing it. That's the best way that AI can work. It's not about whether an institution can do AI. It's about what can AI do to seamlessly fit into the processes to enable them to deliver services, to enable them to deliver rights, and more than anything else, change the lives of the teacher or the farmer, especially the woman farmer who's looking for advice on what to grow on her small household land. But if she's getting the advice that she needs from an institution that she can trust, that's how AI can enable her life to be better. So for me, the question of speed and scale and safety is a question of speed for whom, scale for whom, and safety for whom. And all of these questions need to go into the designing of systems, and that's where it comes when the rubber hits the road in that way. Speed may look like faster than what I had before, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be at the speed of light. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika. I'd like to now welcome Nadeem Hasin, CEO of Digital Green India. Nadeem is passionate to serve the intersectionality of technology, gender and climate and agriculture. Nadeem, over to you.
Hi. Hello everyone. Deepika, thank you. I think you've already set the context for my answer out here, and I think I've been told to talk more about how communities can be a part of how we are creating and using AI. And picking up from what Deepika said, are communities shaping the system or just using it? I think that's the biggest question that we have, especially for an organization like us, which work with smallholder farmers across the country, in fact, across the globe. And in the area of agriculture, it's not theoretical. It is in terms of, how one single AI advisory can really create the biggest problem in a farmer's life, right? How a wrong advisory can really create generation of debt and many other challenges. So one needs to address these things looking at that. When we look at using AI, we are talking about is the community a part of when we are thinking of creating it, or we are using it once it's deployed? And once it's deployed, are we taking feedback from them, right? And when it comes to digital green, we are doing all three of them. All three is equally important for us. And recently, about a year ago, we launched our own AI-based application, Farmer Chat, and today we have more than 1 million farmers using it. With about in India, we have about 45% women using it, and about 8 million queries. And the strength of this is that it was not created for the farmer; it was built with the farmer, and I think that's the differentiator out here. And we launched it about a year ago, and our work didn't stop there. It actually began there because launching was one thing, having users was one thing, but to make sure that we all are speaking about trust, how the farmer is being able to trust that. And a lot of that happened when we used actually regular feedback. So we did a lot of work around taking in-app feedback. We did phone calls to users to ensure that are they really using it properly. We also selected some farmers to understand how are they looking at it, how are they looking at these features. And of course, last but not the least, the AI safety part of it. And for this, we continuously have been working on the reinforcement learning human feedback, where we have a full system where we, along with agronomists, are verifying answers. We are ensuring that the advisory that is going back to the farmer is accurate and contextual. So that's where we talk about the guardrails that we are working on. And as we build all of this, right, we are an organization with about 17 years of experience. So our experience actually of building AI came from sitting with the farmers for so many years, understanding how do you use their knowledge. And it's not something that you are building by just giving something to them. Today, out of this 1 million users, about 70% of them in Kenya actually says that 70% of the users in Kenya are saying that they're using every advice that they're getting within 30 days of getting that advice. In India, 90% of the farmers are saying that they're getting confidence by using this advisory. And these are parameters how we are figuring it out, that is the farmer getting confidence in it? Is the farmer using it? And the whole thing is about giving the decision-making power to the community, right? And how do they influence it? So it's about not AI influencing the farmer, but it is about the farmer influencing AI. And that's been the main thing in how we are building it up. There are a lot of features that as we are evolving, we decided we don't need them. There are a lot of features that we realized that, like we had put something like weather advisory, which was more like a raw data. No farmer needs that, right? We actually had to tweak the features to say exactly what does the farmer need it, and how are they going to use it. So I'll just end this by saying that what's most important is accountability, context, and the power that you can give to a community, and in our case to a farmer, by how you develop this application. And we bring farmer into AI, and we don't take just AI to the farmer. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you. As we come to the conclusion of Act 3, I'd like to invite Nakul Jain, CEO and MD of Advani AI Global, where he leads the organization's deployment across AI for social good at scale. Welcome, Nakul.
Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thank you to Fire.ai and Haq Darshak for this opportunity. Yeah, let's deep dive into safety and inclusion as a use case, and how in real practice do we talk about some of these things. AI safety becomes a real issue when you ask a simple question: who does any wrong decision impact? It's the people, right? And these are the people who might not have an opportunity to go for a litigation or opt out or maybe correct whatever has been done. So if that is the case, then your safety and inclusion cannot be separate issues. It's a part of same issue. So one of these principles, one use case that came for us being a AI for social good organization was when we were rolling out our oral reading fluency solution, which essentially helps students assess for their reading fluencies. Now, if you think about a classroom setup, both privacy for student as well as inclusion are, you cannot debate that, right? And you're talking about these students who come from very different state of life, the way their accents could be different, the way they structure sentences could be different, what they have back home is different. So they come from different walks of life. Also, you cannot, you cannot discount the safety aspect, because once you've given a student a label through any assessment, it just carries on with them, right? So you need to make sure, you need to be sensitive towards it. Now, solving it is not very difficult if you don't have to be practical. You can just collect a lot of data, right? You can just make sure the data is a good representation. But is that even possible in our circumstances? You have people, you have, monetary constraints, you have administrative constraints, your bureaucrats, your decision makers have all the right reasons to sort of not let you just do this enormous exercise of collecting millions of records for a tool that currently has not really proven success. What do you do? I think there are 3 principles that we followed. First, safety by architecture. How do you ensure that no raw data, no PII leaves the phone? Anything that leaves the phone of the teacher who's assessing is only aggregated data, aggregated matrices. Second, humility by default, right? You have to force the model to abstain when it cannot clearly identify, because AI will give you decision no matter what. So there needs to be a filter if the voice is not recorded properly, if there's a lot of background noise, if the model has not been able to understand the student well, you need to give no result rather than trying to give whatever result comes as your output, right? So you have to make sure there's a filter even before you give those decisions. Finally, staged inclusion. You build smaller data sets, representative data sets. You don't try to go big bang. You don't try to deploy, across a jurisdiction. You make sure that those representative groups are crossing certain thresholds before you make that system live for them. What would that result in? It's not a model that comes in overnight. It will have to be done in stages. There will need to be iterations when this is done. There will be multiple failures before you start reaching any success, and you need to set expectations accordingly at all the places. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. We heard from practitioners and people who've overseen deployments at scale. As we go into Act 4, let's also hear from researchers and industry experts on what is their perspective in considering AI safety in the context of deployments for social good. I'd like to invite Aditya Gopalan, Associate Professor at Indian Institute of Science, Department of Electrical Communications Engineering. Welcome, Aditya.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the organizers for this opportunity. So I was asked, what does it practically take to operationalize AI safety and to design and deploy for AI safety in a large-scale system of the kind that you might find in India, more broadly the global south. So I'll start with a very quick, crude caricature of how AI is currently achieved or in most systems. This is via this approach called machine learning. So to get some capability, let's say X from an AI system, what ML machine learning tells you is collect tons of input-output data that represents this capability, and then train a model to force production of those outputs from those inputs. And then after this training is done, you pray to your favorite god that generalization occurs, and then it can answer new questions and go beyond what was found in the training data, right? This is the current mantra. This is wonderful and very useful, of course. Natural language, presented suitably, can encode very diverse capabilities, such as the ability to write poetry, the ability to do mathematical reasoning, help you with scheduling, and so on and so forth. But in the course of many of our studies and studies by community researchers, we have found that strange things can and do occur after training finishes. So for example, if you train for capability X, you might also suddenly get an extra capability Y or Z, and it might also try to unlearn or forget existing capabilities that were there before you did training. So we still don't understand clearly why this happens. And in this context, how is safety approached typically from a design perspective? It's typically approached in a rather post hoc manner, which is that you wait for some undesirable capability or behavior to show up or report by some user, and then you call it unsafe, and then you define a new capability as, I want to train for the original capability not occurring, and hence make the system safe, right? So you rinse and repeat, get data to try and make the system forget that capability, the harmful one, and then you repeat this loop, right? This is not satisfying in many ways. The damage has already been done in most cases by two affected populations of users. And this is really like applying repeated band-aids and patching the system several times. You have no idea where you're going eventually with the system. So with this context, I really want to say that in order to confront the problem of safety more foundationally, we as users and consumers must really get down to defining what we really mean by safe behavior or unsafe behavior, or perhaps partially safe behavior. So for example, what about the manipulation of a human user by an AI system over several conversations with a chatbot? It has actually been found that AI systems can actually manipulate users to take actual actions in the real world over probably several long and subtle episodes of interaction. Does that count as safe? Does that count as unsafe? One has to think about these things in a more deeper manner. This might also involve setting up measurable systems for doing causal inference, figuring out why this AI system is acting this particular way. Eventually, hopefully, this can be translated into numerical metrics, which current day machine learning is very good at optimizing. And especially in the context of the global south, I think we must really think very carefully about what we mean by a desired capability and its expression in the process of actually collecting data. There's a whole labor economy behind providing such data. And we must think of it in a contextual sense. This often depends on a lot of local value norms and ethics. And this is especially relevant to populations like the Indian one. And there is also this very interesting paradox that the global south presents, which is that it has a great potential due to its demographic dividend to actually provide or deliver a lot of data dependent artifacts that will aid the building of future AI systems. Yet we have not really caught up in the sense of the ML infrastructure that is needed for all of this to actually become, make it to the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. As we conclude this fourth and final act, we also get to the conclusion of this lightning talk. But closing the act is a very powerful voice in this discussion. I'd like to welcome Kalika Bali from Microsoft Research. Kalika is a principal researcher at Microsoft Research India and specializes in speech and NLP for over 2 decades. Kalika, welcome.
Thank you. That has been like a lot of diverse perspectives on safety and inclusion. I'm glad we get to hear the diverse perspectives, and because everybody in this room can exist in a silo around this. So I would like to start with the fact that I think it's a fallacy to set up a global south versus a global north kind of a division, and somehow global south has some special things that the global north doesn't. And there's some local customs and there are some local norms. Can I tell you, like the definition, I'm sure, Roger here would bear me out on this. The concept of global south comes from the UNCTAD, divisions or categories. There are 72 plus 1, which includes everything from Singapore to UAE, all the way to Ethiopia and Nepal, and everything in the middle. So we're not really talking about like this global south where there are like these specific norms and cultures and which have to be catered to in a specific way, right? We're talking about the whole world, except, these 2 pieces and some pieces in the south of the world, right? So that's the one thing, that's the mindset I would really like to change, that it is everybody's problem. It's not just the global south's problem. There's nothing specific that needs to be done just for the global south. It has to be done for the entire world. And to think that, if we are going to align things to the norms of India, they would work even in Kenya is a fallacy. They won't. So how do we think about safety in that case? We have to think about safety in terms of absolute protocols, absolute evaluation benchmarks that can scale across cultures. And how do we do that? By paying attention. I mean, because most of the people who build these models and are also a part of a very similar homogeneous, I don't know, I'm making a assumption here, homogeneous culture, they think their norms are like something universal. They're not. The models and the systems have been tuned to specific norms, and they need to be respectful, inclusive, as well as build these protocols for the rest of the norms of the world. We don't do it for other things. Why would we do it for AI? Because the danger here is that if we do this for AI, then we are starting another wave of colonialism. Because in my mind, if you actually build something for a powerful region and then try to impose it on the rest of the world, that's colonialism, right? And what can we do? I was asked a very different question and about what we can do about putting, more evaluations, data practices, etc. One thing is we stop translating safety from English to the other languages or other cultures, right? It's not the same. We stop translating inclusion because it's not the same. I really, as an Indian, do not care about race. I care about castes, which right now no model that is coming out from the West knows anything about. As an Indian, I care about the fact that, this is my favorite example, I care about the fact that culturally we do not allow, we have a legal, ban, it's illegal in India to decide what the sex of a fetus is. There are very specific cultural reasons and social reasons for that. But then, right now, there is no way to stop somebody from uploading a picture, ultrasound of your fetus to decide, to let ChatGPT or whatever decide that, this is a male or a female. And that's not just the norm, that's like a whole way of living for entire populations. So I'll stop here. I would really strongly discourage people to think about global south versus global north. Global south is actually the majority of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalika, for closing on such an energetic note for us. We are almost at time, so we may not be able to take any questions from the audience. I'd like to thank all our speakers who have graciously spent their time here and shared some wonderful insights across the spectrum of what does safety look like in its core and what does safety mean for sustainable development, and safety for whom, agency for whom, and what are practical considerations when implementations are planned. I would also like to thank the audience for being patient and being part of this session for us. Thank you again, and have a rest of the good AI Safety Summit for the rest of the week. Thank you. Thank you.